meat processing. Am I close? He loves guns and probably fast cars too, and his toys at his ranch in beautiful Texas. Please, on your feet for me, and welcome Tom Berry back to Dealmaker again. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, man, what an introduction and what a crowd. Good night. Jim, what kind of venue are you going to have next year? Right? I mean, last year we were bursting at the seams, and now we're pretty full again. So, fantastic crowd. Fantastic. So, right, yeah. Well, you're welcome. So, my name is Tom Berry. I'm from Houston, Texas. Not originally, though. I got there as fast as I could, but I was raised actually in Ohio, Eastern Ohio, not too far from here, and but been in Texas for well over 20 years, and I've done nothing but real estate for the last 22. That's all I've done, and I've done a little bit of everything. I started in wholesaling and then went into single-family fix and flip, and then single-family rental property, then multifamily, and we just we tried to graduate. As Jim said, I like to think big. I don't like to do anything small. So I wanted to get to the next level. And it's not because I'm chasing anything either. That's the interesting thing about me. People think that I'm chasing something. I just want to know how much I can achieve with what God gave me. I just don't want to waste it. Right? Does anybody else feel that way? Where you want to just see what could I do, right? What could I end up doing if I set my mind to it? I barely graduated high school. I had a 1.8 GPA. I hear that's not good, but so college was not in the mix for me. I just didn't like school. I didn't like sitting still. Could you imagine? I don't like sitting still. I've paced this stage like 15 times already. But I love business. I just was fascinated with business, and I wanted to learn as much as I could about how could I grow a business, because to me, the people that grow a business are the people that really run the country. If you think about it, jobs don't exist without us that grow businesses, right? I have 58 employees across all of our companies, and I'm proud of that because that's 58 families that derive their income from coming to work with us. And that's just the way I think. So when I got into real estate, I wanted to get into commercial as fast as I could, because to me, that was the next thing. It was a way for me to scale. So I'm going to share with you, I pulled slides out of a one-day course for a 47-minute talk. So I'm going to go really fast, but what I'm going to try to do as I do this is I'm going to try to pique your interest, because I really want you to find me throughout the rest of the day today, or at the bar later tonight or tomorrow, and I'll be here all day tomorrow as well, and ask questions if you have any interest in learning about commercial real estate. Because a lot of my friends in Houston, they've been in real estate, some of them longer than I have, and they're still doing single family. They are literally still doing the same thing they were doing 30 years ago. Now, I got to ask you one question. Did you get into real estate to have a job, or did you get into real estate to be free? To be free, right? So I'm going to share with you why I think this is a fantastic way to do it. Clicker, that's what I needed. Cool. All right. To be free, financially free that is, we have to build wealth, right? Because we have to be able to live off of our money working for us. But to build wealth, we've got to accumulate equity. To accumulate equity, we have to accumulate assets. And to accumulate assets, you could do that slowly or quickly. You can do that through addition, or what I like to do, I like to use multiplication, because I can get to a larger number faster using multiplication than I can addition. Would you agree? So if you think about building assets, when my wife and I were building our single family portfolio, we were adding one house at a time, right? We go out, we buy a house, we got another one. Eventually I figured out that I could go to tired landlords that had a bunch of houses, and I could buy 10 at a time. I could buy 7 at a time. One time we bought 13 at a time by buying packages. That was multiplication, right? I'm adding more to it. But then I figured out, well, I could just go to commercial and I could go even faster. So what is commercial? Quickly. It's a residential property with 5 units or more, or a non-residential property. Real simple. True commercial, and I'm going to use this word, and this is a term I coined, okay? It's not a real term, it's just a Tom term. True commercial is an asset that don't have people living in them and they don't have a residential lease. So by that definition, would a 12-plex be true commercial? No, not to me. And I'll get into the why of why I differentiate between that here in a few minutes. So why should you want to get into commercial real estate? Economies of scale for me. Adding zeros, right? Instead of doing a deal for 200 grand, I could do a deal for 2 million. Well, that's 10 times, right? And you can do that. And I don't want to go buy a $2 million house. That's a risky endeavor for me. But if I could buy something for 2 million instead of 200 grand, I'm adding to my assets a lot heavier or faster, right? It's also easier to manage than a single family. I'm going to go into why here in a minute. Better leases, too. I love the leases in commercial. Residential, not so much. Less government intrusion. What did we learn in COVID? I mean, we learned a lot of things in COVID. I'll keep it to real estate, okay? What we learned in COVID is that if you have a residential lease, you don't necessarily own your property because some unelected bureaucrat in your jurisdiction could tell you you have to house people even if the people aren't paying you. Oh, and by the way, you get to pay your bills. You still got to pay your note. They're still going to charge you the county taxes, but you don't get to collect the rent. And during COVID is when I made the decision I would never own another residential lease as long as I lived. And I started selling them all, every one of them. Because you know what they didn't do? They didn't do the same thing on commercial properties. See, the commercial folks, they still had to pay their leases. There was no relief for them. It was just the people on a residential lease. All right, so the very first thing I would do if I'm going into commercial real estate is the very first thing you want to do is build a buy box. So many people skip this first step, and that's what screws them up. It screws them up bad, okay? What does a buy box look like? It's a definition, a very tight definition of what you're going to buy. I like to look at it as a set of rules for myself. How many of you in here have squirrel syndrome? You know what I'm talking about, right? All right, a lot of heads went up. Right? I have squirrel syndrome. So if all I say is, hey, I'm going to go buy commercial real estate, I'm going to be looking at a self-storage today in Alabama, and then I'm going to be looking at a mobile home park in Texas, and then I'm going to be looking at an office building in Phoenix. I'm going to be looking at everything. Because why? It all fit my definition of I'm going to buy commercial. That's foolish. We've got to get it narrowed down. We got to get tighter with that definition, right? So a buy box says, I'm going to buy this type of property in this area, in this price range, this square footage, this property class, this asset class, and I'm going to determine whether I'm going to go after value adds, whether I'm going to go after momentum plays, or whether I'm going to go after distressed value adds. And by the way, I'll define those here for you on the next slide. Only after you make these decisions and you narrow that focus should you start looking at real estate. And by the way, if you're not doing that in single family, you should. And by the way, if you're not doing that in lending, you should. We should all have a box, right? What's the box? I know. Bill Cook says no box, right? I know he's sitting back there seething. I don't want to be in a box, right? But really what the box that I'm talking about is the rules for myself. I'm setting rules for myself. And then stick to your rules for yourself. If your rules say this is what you buy, don't look over here at this if it doesn't fit your rules, right? What good is it to make rules for ourselves if we don't follow them? And so many guys just chase things. They just chase things. All right, so property type. There are there's a lot of different property types. I threw a few of them on here. I mentioned apartments, office space, retail space, mobile home parks, industrial, warehouse. There's so many more that we could mention. But what I really want to focus on here is when you narrow down what property type, what asset type you're going to go after, you've got to understand this. There's a rule in commercial real estate. It's as amenable as gravity, usually. And that rule is, the easier that property is to manage, the less profitable it should be. Now think about this for a minute. If I'm buying a C-class apartment complex in a rougher neighborhood of a city, or I'm buying a real nice strip center on a real strong freeway with triple net leases in it, which one is harder to manage? Which one? The apartments, every time. Obviously. I've got tenants that are living in there. I got toilets in there and kitchens and dogs and, we got over here, I've got businesses. I got none of those other problems, right? This one over here should be less profitable. I should have to be paid more to buy this one because it's a pain in the butt. Would you agree? And anytime you see that rule broken, it's an anomaly. And anomalies don't last. They typically will correct themselves within 2 years. And I'll share with you an anomaly later on. So, value or momentum play. I said a value play is I can go in and I can add significant value by making some changes to the property. It might not even be the property itself. And I'll give you some examples here on the next slide. But the value add deals are going to be the riskiest because you're gambling that you can actually make those changes. I have people come to me all the time wanting a loan on a value add deal, and I say, well, what are you going to do to it? Well, I'm going to raise the rents. Okay. Have you done the research to make sure that the market will support raising the rents? Well, no, I'm just going to raise them. That way it'll be worth more. Okay, I'm sorry, that's not how that works, right? That's not how any of that works, right? You're making assumptions that you can raise the rent. Let's do some research to make sure that the market supports raising those rents, right? That's one thing that you can do to add value. These value plays are what we're used to in single family, right? We buy a house that needs roof work. We buy a house that needs foundation work. These are value add deals. And a lot of single family guys and gals that do move into commercial think they want to do the same thing with commercial. Guys, those are a lot riskier in commercial. I just want to give this disclaimer. That's much riskier in commercial. In commercial, you might want to look at a momentum play, which is the property's already stabilized. You're just going to ride the momentum of a stabilized asset, but still try to negotiate a good price or buy it at the time of the market that they are all priced well. And I'll explain that here in a second. Now, value adds. Maybe it's better management controls. Maybe it's raising the rents. You've done the research, and yes, you can raise the rents. So every time a lease renews, you can raise that rent up to market. That's a value add. Collections. I've seen some where they just don't collect. They just let people there and they don't collect. By going in and having better collections systems, they can raise the value of the property. Because here's the beauty of commercial over single family, among all the others that I've mentioned. You control the value of commercial assets to a large degree. Do you control the value of a single family asset? No. What controls the value of a single family asset? Comps. That's right. And those are out of our control, are they not? Now, what determines the value of a commercial asset? The income. The income. It's called the NOI, the net operating income. So if I can reduce expenses or I can increase income, therefore increasing my part at the end, which is called the NOI, I have increased the value of the property without worrying about comps. Okay? So you want to add as many value adds as you can. Distressed value plays. This is a highly distressed property that you can add value to. The problem is it's an alligator. Buying an alligator, that is a property that is unprofitable when you buy it. This is risky, very risky. I've done it, okay? But it's very risky, not for the beginner. That's not a beginner strategy. Because here's the deal, and I found this out the hard way, like every other lesson I've learned in life. I bought this property. It was losing about $10,000 a month, and I did not factor that into my budget when I bought that property. Okay? That was one of those, moments. So then it became a race for me to get this thing up to break even as fast as possible so I could stop losing $10,000 a month, right? Fortunately, it was a small enough property we were able to do that. But I learned, okay, when you buy an alligator, you have to have another line item in your budget called stabilization cost. That is the amount of money you intend to throw away from the time you close to the time you hit break even on negative cash flow. I learned that one the hard way. All right, so this is a value add. One of them that we purchased way back when, 2012, long time ago. But this is a neat property. It was already fixed up. Value add doesn't mean that it's ugly. Value add doesn't mean it needs any fixing. On this one, the only thing it needed was a better owner and good tenants. That's all it needed. This property was on the market for $425,000, a little 10-unit in Galveston, Texas. It needed zero rehab dollars. Zero. Because a construction company had a lot of money, and they decided they were going to go into the rental business. So they bought this ugly property, fixed it all up, actually over-fixed it. They put way more into it than they should have. And then they had 2 tenants in it, and they decided, oh, hell no, we don't want to be in the rental business. So they became a tired landlord within 2 months, okay? We were able to pick this thing up. I went over to the Galveston County Housing Authority, and I said, hey, y'all need any extra units? And they're like, how many bedrooms? I said, 3 bedrooms. There were 10 3-bedrooms in there. They're like, we'll take them all. I said, how much? $11.50 a month. You know what market was? 8. I'm like, sold at $11.50 a month? Yep. And within 3 months, they filled it for us. And we just rode it out for a couple of years, and then flipped it. That's a value add that didn't take a lot of value add, right? It just needed better management. It just needed better tenants. It needed some tenants. And the 2 we had to get rid of. They were horrible. They had no idea how to screen tenants. And that's why they were tired landlords within months. They didn't know how to screen for good tenants, okay? There's a lesson in that too. All right, momentum plays. These are deals that are already running good. They look good. These are things that an institutional buyer would look for, okay? But every once in a while, you're going to find a momentum play that you're going to be able to buy in your buy box, and those are sweet. I'll show you an example of one of those here in a little bit. Study your market. Everybody asks me, how did you learn this, Tom? How did you learn commercial? I studied it. I looked at all the for sale listings. I would pour through all the offering memorandums that were available to me. I would call the brokers and ask them to send me financials, send me P&Ls, send me rent rolls. And I just started studying them until I understood them. And I could read them. And I could see, various things in these rent rolls and in the financials. And then I started to do some walkthroughs and try to test myself. When I did walkthroughs, if I saw a component on a property that I was not familiar with, I would research that. I would find out who knows about a chiller system. I'd never seen a chiller system before yesterday. This thing is huge. What do those cost if it goes bad? Oh, $130,000? Wow, that's different than a typical AC, isn't it? Yeah. Or a lift station. I'd never seen a lift station before, a little apartment complex we bought. But it had a sewage lift station. I called a guy that works on them. I said, come out, inspect it, and tell me all about it. And if this thing goes bad, what's the cost going to be, right? I wanted to be prepared for those things. And that's how you learn. I didn't take a course on this. There really weren't any courses that I was aware of on commercial real estate. There were a lot of on apartments, but I wanted to learn the whole thing. And here's the beauty. One commercial deal operates the same as the other. If you understand the math in commercial real estate, it doesn't matter the asset class. Now, each asset class will have different peculiarities, like a chiller system or a lift station or different components. But at the end, the business of a piece of commercial real estate is all the same. The math works all the same, and I'll share the math here with you as well. So, P&L statement. That's the very first thing you want to ask for. Profit and loss statement. You're going to get them in different formats. You're going to hope that they use QuickBooks or some other form of software with a couple of presses of a button. They can print them out for you. I was actually handed an old-style ledger one time for 2 apartment complexes we were buying in a package. And I noticed that the ink on every single page was exactly the same. Now, how much credence do you think I put into those ledgers? Like 0. Yeah, Jeff, 0. Absolutely none. So you have to be careful, and you have to use the old Ronald Reagan adage, trust but verify, right? Trust but verify. So, but you want to look at all those P&Ls and see what the expenses are. The rent roll. You got to have the rent roll because this is going to tell you every rentable unit in the property, whether it's occupied or not, who occupies it, what the rent is, how much deposit's being held, the start date and end date of the lease. Is it month to month? And that's at a minimum. A really good rent roll may even have more information than that. But this tells you a lot about your tenant base. Guys, in commercial assets, there are 3 pieces to the value of commercial real estate. The first one is the physical assets, of the attributes of the real estate. That is the condition of the property itself, the age and so forth, the traffic count, if it's retail. What else? All the things that you would think of in single family. But the next piece of the value is your tenant strength. The stronger the tenant, the higher the value of the real estate. Now think about that for a second. If I'm buying a shopping center and I have an Aldi's and I have a Cato and a Dollar Tree, okay, that's in one shopping center, or I have another shopping center that has a bunch of mom and pops that you've never heard of before, which shopping center do you think is worth more? Given if everything else is the same, this one with those national credit tenants is going to be worth more because we would assume that those tenants have a better ability to pay their rent in a downturn than the mom and pops that have only been in business 2, 4, 5 years and they only have one location, right? So tenant base is a huge part of the value in commercial real estate. And then the third and final one that I want to mention, and I don't have a slide on this, but the third one is the leases. How strong is the paper on this property? How strong are the leases? If they are poorly written leases, poorly structured, it is not worth nearly as much as if they are really good leases. So those are the 3 components to value on a piece of commercial real estate. Trust but verify, we hit that. Pro forma financials. Be careful of the words pro forma. I have another term for it. You're waiting for it, aren't you? Broker's pipe dream. That's what I call that. Broker's pipe dream, typically, is what pro forma means. So a broker will like to take the real financials and massage them a little bit in something they call a pro forma. And that pro forma is supposed to tell you what you could do with the property. So what I like to do with that is I like to ask that broker, well, why didn't they? Okay, if it's that danged easy, why didn't they? Okay, I'm not buying on what you think somebody could do with it, since you've never owned a property like this in your life, by the way. Thank you for your advice, but it's worth that, right? You don't say it out loud, but that's what's going through my head. No, you want to build your pro forma. What do I think, with my experience and my team, we can do with this property? And you build your pro forma. That's what you're going to go by. Quickly, I'll hit the math here for you. And I know you won't be able to follow it, so if you just want to take pictures of the slides, then you can play with this later. Operating income minus operating expenses equals net operating income, or NOI. Now, NOI then has some other things taken out of it, like debt service, capital improvement. Okay? So you don't put your debt service in above the NOI line. It's below the NOI line. Let's go through some math. NOI stands for net operating income. That's the operating income minus the operating expenses. Real simple. Again, debt service is not calculated in there. Although you certainly got to pay it, don't you? So we got to account for it at the end. All right? Cap rate. Cap rate stands for capitalization rate, and this is how we gauge the profitability of the property relative to the price. It's expressed as a percentage, and it's real simple. You take the NOI divided by the purchase price, that equals the cap rate. So while when we think about single family, we think about comps, right? Houses in this area of this size and this, so forth, they're all going to sell for the same thing. Well, in commercial, it's the same, but it's based more off the income than it is what another property sold for. So what you want to know is, if I'm buying C-class apartment complexes, like I used to, in Galveston County, Texas, I want to know, what is the prevailing cap rate? What are they trading for right now? And I can tell you right now, in that area, that type of property is trading at between a 6 and 7 cap. Okay? To me, that's crazy. I would never buy a C-class apartment complex at anything less than a 9, okay? The most I paid ever was a 13 when I was buying apartments, but I wasn't buying in this season. So you see, cap rates change with the market cycles, right? They change, and there's a season to buy and a season to sell. The Bible actually says there's a season to sow and a season to reap, and I kind of look at that as the same correlation in real estate. So would I be a net buyer today of apartment complexes? Heavens no. Not at the prevailing cap rate today. So the question I always ask myself is, what is underpriced today? And for 9 years, the answer to me was nothing. For 9 years, I just built a lending company. I didn't buy any real estate. I used to teach all kind of real estate classes and courses and so forth. And I went 9 years and didn't buy anything because I couldn't find anything on sale. I couldn't find anything with a cap rate that I was willing to buy. But 2 years ago, that changed, and I found one. So cash on cash return, this is another thing that you're going to want to know. Just snap a picture. You can look that up later. I won't get into all the boring details. I want to hit an example of an income and expense statement on a 10-plex, okay, a 10-unit apartment building, because I'm not talking about multi-million-dollar properties here. My wife and I didn't start with multi-million-dollar properties. I'll show you our very first commercial property here in a minute, and we paid $95,000 for it. So for all of you that are sitting here saying, I just don't know that I could wrap my head around doing commercial because you're thinking it means huge numbers, it doesn't. It doesn't. It just means a different asset class. You can buy commercial properties for the same price that you're currently buying houses for. I promise you. And I'll give you examples, okay? But if we look at the income and expenses on a 10-unit, and let's just say the tenant pays all the utilities to make this real easy. The rent is $600 a month. Common electric is $60 a month. You got to pay that. Taxes are $4,200 a year, and insurance is $3,800 a year. Question is, what is the NOI? Because I got to know what the net operating income is before I know what my maximum offer could be, okay? Because I'm going to apply it to a certain cap rate, a prevailing cap rate that I'm willing to pay to give them my offer. So the very first thing you have to do is convert all your expenses to annual. You're going to get expenses from the seller or from the broker. Some are going to be on monthly, some are going to be annual, and obviously we need a commonality here. So you're going to convert everything to annual. And if we look at the math, gross potential income is $72,000 minus 5% vacancy, because how did I throw 5% in there? I didn't pull that out of thin air. What did I do? I researched what is the vacancy in that particular area right now. What's the average vacancy rate? If it's 10, I'm putting 10 in there. If it's 9, I'll put 9. But if it's 5, I'll put 5. And I'll never put less than 5, ever, okay? Because I don't think that's possible. Now I got expenses over here. I got 4,200, I got 38, I got 720. So my total expenses are 8,720. NOI is $56,000 a year, which means if I'm willing to pay at a cap rate of 8%, I could pay $701,000 for this property. Okay? Everybody agree with that? And here's the problem. Everybody agrees with that. But it's wrong. We're missing some things. We're missing some things. You got to ask more questions, because that's exactly what the seller is going to do. They're going to feed you some information and say, here it all is. And it's up to you to ask questions. So wait a minute. You said the tenant pays all the utilities, right? So that means they're paying electric, they're paying water, they're paying for Well, no, they're paying electric. Okay, well, who the heck's paying for water? Oh, well, yeah, you got to pay that, but it's small. It's just a little bit. Does it change the numbers, right? Well, what about the trash? Well, yeah, I guess we do have a trash bill too. Yeah. Oh, you got to dig. You got to dig. And by the way, who's getting paid to manage this? Didn't see a management fee in there. Should you always have a management fee? Even if you're going to manage it? Well, yeah, you got to be paid for managing it, or you have to have the money available to say, I don't want to manage it anymore. Here, Mr. Management Company, you take it. Right? Got to have the money built in to do that. And then CapEx. I didn't see anything for maintenance. So you're telling me over the course of the next year, I won't have to spend a single nickel to maintain this property. That's not believable, is it? And just missing those few things, that made a huge difference, didn't it? Our maximum allowable offer is not $701,000. It's $528,000, or $173,000 uh-oh. So ask a lot of questions. And if you're diving into real estate, if you're diving into commercial, and you don't know the questions to ask, get with somebody that does. Say, hey, look these things over for me. What am I missing? And go through, have an itemized. When I was new, I would have a list of every expense I had ever seen. And I would just go through. So who pays for this? Who pays for this? What's this? Why there's nothing for this? I would just literally go through and wear them out with potential expenses to drag the expenses out of them. Because that is where you will get hurt. That is where you get hurt. I see it all the time. That was our very first commercial property, a little 5-unit. It barely fit the category of commercial. It was a value play, tired landlord. I'm not going to go through all the numbers. You don't care. There it is, done. I know it's an ugly color here, but on a barrier island, that's actually cool. So. We bought that at a 22 cap, by the way. Before and after. Okay, never pay more than your max price. If your max price is $528,000, don't pay more for it. And here's why. Because I've never seen a property foreclosed because somebody paid too little for it. That's a mistake I have never seen cause foreclosure. Okay? So it's okay to err on the side of caution on all your numbers. Always. Don't get emotional about the daggum deal. It's just a piece of property. Too many people come to me wanting loans on deals that are not deals, And then to justify it, they start throwing all this feeling crap at me. Oh, but I just love it. Oh, but it's across from a great school. I don't give a rat. I don't care. Okay? Doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. The math matters. Buy on math. You'll never get hurt if you're doing your math right. This was our third commercial property, before and after. This is a momentum play. That's the before and after would be the same because we didn't have to do anything on it. It was a 72 unit. It was completely rehabbed. It was 98% occupied the day we closed on it, and we bought it at a 13.89 cap rate. Actuals, walking in. Different time, okay? That was a time when nobody wanted apartments. Now, you can't buy a 13.89 cap on a stabilized asset to save your life, okay? Office, retail, single tenant commercial. These are all good ones to look at too. Smaller ones, okay? Not huge ones. If I were getting started today, somebody just asked me this I was at another event yesterday, and they said, man, if you were getting started again, what would you do? I said, well, I'll tell you the same thing I just told my son-in-law that asked that very question about a year ago. He's like, what would you be doing now? And he's done no real estate at all yet. And I said, I would skip single family completely. I would just go into commercial. And he's like, okay. So he went and him and his business partner, they just bought their first commercial asset about 6 months ago. It's a single tenant commercial building. They had it leased in 2 months. They cash flow about $3,800 a month after all expenses. And it just rises in value. They've got an escalating lease. They put in a perfect lease. I might have given them a little advice on that, but they got really good paper on it. So that asset is just going to continue to grow, and it's an absolute net, meaning they have no responsibility for anything on the property if it goes wrong. That's an absolute net. That's better than a triple net. No responsibility whatsoever. The roof leaks, your problem. Tenant, get it fixed. Well, I got to replace the AC. Yeah, go ahead. It's your problem. It's an absolute net lease. That's the best lease you could possibly own. So triple net, you've heard this term. A lot of people have heard the term triple net lease. How many of you, wave your hand if you've heard that term, because I got to wake you up. You're halfway asleep. All right, so triple net, what does that mean? Well, office, retail, industrial, single tenant commercial, these will use a different type of lease, most generally called triple net. And the three N's refer to the property taxes, property insurance, and common area maintenance of the property. So if I'm going out, let's say I need a new office, and I call the office broker, and I say, hey, how much is that office? I saw the for rent sign. He might tell me it's going to be $1.50 a foot for the rent, and then another 64 cents a foot for the triple net. And our minimum is a 5-year lease. That would be very common to hear. So what I'm hearing is, for the term of 5 years, I am committing to $1.64 a month for the lease. But in addition to that, currently, I'm going to have to pay another 64 cents a foot for the taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance to be covered. The key, though, is that triple net is not locked at all. If his expenses go up in those 3 categories, or any of those 3 categories, he's going to continually send me those increases, and my 64 cents could go to $1.04 in the next couple of years. Now, my $1.60 for the rent, that's locked for 5 years. But as that landlord's expenses go up on taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance, he is just going to drive those right through to me, and he's going to have me paying those expenses. Boy, owning single-family homes, wouldn't you like that deal? How many of you have had your insurance go up recently? How many of you have had your taxes go up recently? All right? Were you able to just pass that right on through to the tenant? Here you go, tenant. Oh, by the way, here's that extra. Here's the bill for the extra. You got 30 days to pay it. Now you understand triple net. You like a triple net lease? especially if you're the landlord, right? Yeah. If you're the landlord, you like a triple net lease. If you're the leasee, you like a gross lease. A gross lease is what you're using on single family. And the way to remember is a gross lease is gross. It's just gross. For real estate investors and landlords, gross lease is gross. That's how you remember that. Office buildings, you use triple nets. So here's a breakdown of leases from the worst to the best, if you want to snap a picture and learn a little bit more about it later. Gross leases are the worst. They're gross, right? And then you've got modified gross. That's what our office building used, was a modified gross. It's a gross lease, but we were able to pass through some expenses. But the expenses were based on a base year, and we could only raise it a certain amount. So if the tax collector raised our expenses more than what we were allowed to raise Quincy's rent at Quest, well, we had to eat that difference. Now, if the tax collector did not raise it more than past the base rent, then we could pass that on to any of our tenants. A single net, that just means you're only able to pass one through. A double net, you're passing two of them through. And a triple net means you're passing all three through. But the best one of all is the one on single tenant commercial properties, which is an absolute net, which means, in most cases, no landlord responsibilities. None. Shopping centers are mostly triple net. That's one of the things I love about them. Very little owner responsibilities, and they have some unique value add opportunities to them. That's what we buy now. So we've done all the other ones that we talked about. Now we focus on shopping centers. I like 100,000 square foot. That's our average, 110, 120. I like shopping centers that have 20 or 30 tenants in them. And I like shopping centers that have very little shopping in them. Okay? So you think about a shopping center with very little shopping. Well, what would it have? Well, this one in Rockport, it has a big furniture store at one end, and it had a courthouse at the other end. And then in between, it had a seafood restaurant, a pizza shop. It's got the State Farm agent. It's got a nail salon. All of these things, you can't get those things most generally on Amazon, right? So I'm looking for tenant mixes that are kind of Amazon resistant, let's say. And you might also look for things that are recession resistant as well, right? Everybody's going to have insurance on their car and on their house. So the State Farm agent, he's pretty resistant to Amazon, and he's also pretty resistant to recession, right? Everybody's got to go to the courthouse if they get a summons, so I think the courthouse is probably a pretty good bet. And I'll bet they're going to pay their bill, because if they don't, I'm going to have to take them to eviction court in their own house. Okay, so I think they're going to pay their rent on time, right? I don't think I'm going to have a problem with them. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. The other thing that I like to look for is leases that I can rehab. I don't like to rehab property anymore. I've been there, I've done that, and I'm over it. Now, I like to rehab the paper. I want to rehab the lease. I want to take gross leases and turn them into triple net. I want to take 2-year leases and turn them into 10-year leases. I want to take leases that don't have escalations and put escalations in them. And that's what we do to value add. Also, look how large these parking lots are on these things. We can sell some of that ground, and that money goes against our cost basis and drives down the price of what we paid for it. This is another one we bought in Dayton, Tennessee. This one had a bunch of land that we were able to sell. And that's the last one we just bought. And look at all that land where the red arrow is. So that's all currently on the market. We're going to subdivide that off, and we can do several things. First of all, we could develop more, but I'm not a developer. I don't want to do all that work. I'd just rather sell it to somebody else and let them develop it. Or I could do a ground lease. I'd do a ground lease and let somebody else build on my land and just lease them the ground that the building is on. And in commercial, that's totally legit. It's very common. So rather than selling it, somebody might say, hey, just lease me the dirt for 99 years. Okay, we can do that too. Whatever it is, it's free money. because we don't buy based on these things. We buy based on the actual performance of the property. So any of these other extras that we can do are just, they're just extras for us. That's my contact information. There's 3 ways that I might be able to help you. If you know of a shopping center that I should know about, certainly forward it to me. I would love to pay you a referral fee or a commission if you're an agent. I'd be happy to do that. If you are looking for loans, I'd love to talk to you about that. We have a booth out here. We are a sponsor. And if you need to place money in a shopping center or in a loan fund, I'd be happy to help you with that as well. Thank you very much for your time. Right. 4 minutes to go.
I know. Does anyone have a... Oh, I don't have a mic. Can somebody bring me a mic back? Who's got an aha moment from commercial? Especially as it compares to residential. Anybody? He is a young man building an awesome rental portfolio. You've got to get to know Morgan. All right, so who had their hand up? Oh, Eric, how you doing, buddy?
Thank you, Jim. Tom, I heard you speak last year. You were incredible last year. You placed a lot of emphasis on, why are we doing this? Where are you headed? And this year you shook me again I had so many commercial opportunities early on in my career. I don't think I was prepared for them. I wasn't ready for them. But now hearing your speech and looking back, I had 3 or 4 commercials under contract with purchase prices of less than $150,000. That were auto shops, that were Dollar Generals, and I just did not know how to navigate it. And so for all the young people in the room, just know it's more about who you surround yourself with. I did not have this community, but if you're young in the room and you're investing and you don't know how to navigate that, surround yourself with people that do. Because if I was in this room 6 years ago, I probably could have taken down those deals. So thank you.
Right.
That is an awesome statement, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Eric, I got to say, you are now leading a community in Atlanta called Dealmaker Atlanta, where you are educating the next generation too. So thanks for stepping up in leadership. Love it. Who else has an aha moment right here? Here we go. Oh, I'll go back there. Get my steps in.
Absolute leases. I love it. Something we have to implement in our commercial space. No, great presentation, very
Thank you.
helpful and very enlightening.
Thank you.
You do a lot of commercial. Tell everyone what you do.
Well, I tell them we do storage inside and out. So we have over 1 million square feet now. Think of self-storage, warehouses, manufacturing space, and we do a lot of boat and RV parking, tractor trailer parking. So we just acquired
Which ones do you like best?
all of them.
Good answer.
Well, I mean,
Good
the
answer.
self-storage is always great, but a lot of people are chasing that space now. That's
Yep.
one of our challenges we got. So we got a choice. We can either say, everybody going after the same piece of meat, or we can look at other areas we can diversify into, and that's what we're doing. We just acquired a 21-acre parcel, an old manufacturing company that had a lot of yard area and had 60,000 square feet of commercial space in it, and we've bought the company and sold it off and rented part of the space, and we're going to repurpose the boat and RV parking, to that use, and then rent out some of the commercial space, and it's great. So we're loving it.
Love it. You think Wendell's somebody you guys should get to know?
Yes.
I love that about Dealmaker.
Alicia.
All right. Oh, hey, Alicia. Here we go. You will get to hear from Alicia in a couple days.
Well, Tom, I think for me at least, I don't understand the commercial space. The largest residential property I did was a triplex that you actually funded that deal with ILS. But I think I'm going to take you up on that referral fee, and you just tell me whenever I finally nailed it. Let's go through. So my trial and error can actually be with some guidance there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think everyone, if you're scared of the commercial space, like you said, add a couple of zeros. It is scary, but that's a great opportunity to try, right? Bring him the deals. If it works, it works. And he can tell you where you face planted.
As
Look,
she
guys,
looks me in the eyes. Yes, I got it. I caught that, Alicia. I'm
Wasn't-
just saying.
but wasn't
I
our
face
first
planted more
house-
than once.
Wasn't our first house scary too?
Yeah.
Right? So don't let fear stop us. You didn't let it stop you the first time. Don't let it stop you the next time, right? So there, that lady has had her hand up.
Well, okay, I'll get that one next.
All right.
But
You're next,
I don't
ma'am.
want to forget the folks down on this end. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of great people down here. This is a great table right here. Here we go. Who was it? Artem, go ahead.
Hi, it was a great speech. I have a question. So it's a huge bridge from $2 million. Probably everybody has like a home here, a single family. Would you suggest a good entry into this space, into commercial, buying a condo? Because in our area, at least here in Virginia, there's a lot of commercial condos which you can buy for $200,000, $250,000.
I'm not a fan of condos, either in residential or commercial space. I wouldn't mind building some commercial condo spaces, but I don't like to buy a piece of a property, and here's why. Because I have no control over what my neighbors do with theirs, right? If they let somebody come in that just has something horrible, I have no control over that if I only own this little piece, and I have no control over anything else. That's just a personal thing for me.
I have actually a structural question. So triple net leases, tenant pays for everything, great. How do you mitigate that tenant doesn't actually take care of the property, lease expires, and prevent from them sort of neglecting the property?
The same way you would with a single family home. Good tenant screening. Good tenant screening. It's all about getting that good tenant in there. We don't have a problem with people tearing up shopping center space. These are businesses. When they leave, they broom sweep it. You know, it's just way different than when we had apartments and houses. Way different. It's a different mindset. If you think about who your tenant is in an apartment
Who was
complex,
it over here?
and who
Oh,
your tenant
hey,
is
Sarah.
in a shopping center or in any other commercial asset, it's a different class.
All right, here we go, Sarah.
Thank you, Tom. I just want to say that I definitely, I would love to be where you are down the road, but you really speak to me because you started in where I went to college, Galveston. I wish I bought property there when I was in college or finished college. But I would love to do a 1031 into something like a big commercial property.
There you go.
And I just wanted to ask you about, you said the ground leases. What kind of returns can you expect on that? And can you explain just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'll give a real brief explanation. And returns I can't really speak to because every property would be different. Every area would be different, right? But what is a ground lease? You are literally leasing a piece of ground for somebody to build a building on. That is a ground lease. So you don't own the building, you own the ground, and they own the building. And it's very common in commercial real estate. I know it sounds odd to somebody that has not approached that, but yeah, do some research on it. It's pretty cool.
Rent the dirt. I mean, it's
Yep.
not that
You just
dissimilar
rent the
from a
dirt.
mobile home park, really. Who
And I
else?
promise if they
we
put
go.
a building on your property to put their business in, they're not going anywhere, right? That's pretty secure. They're going to pay that ground lease.
Hey, I just had a question that I noted down here. If you find an anomaly, it will usually correct itself within 2 years. Everything reverts to the mean. I don't know if I maybe missed it. I was just wondering if you could expand upon that.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually brought that back. That's why I'm buying shopping centers right now. That's why I buy shopping centers, because right now I'm buying shopping centers at a 10 cap. Okay? 9.5 to 10.5 is what we're paying for those centers that you just saw that did not need rehab. They were already full of tenants. Now, look at the other side of what are apartments trading at. Apartments, I said, are trading in a 6s to 7. Why in the world would I ever buy apartments that are not even going to pay me as much as the shopping center when the shopping center is so much easier to run and manage? That's an anomaly. That should not be happening right now, but it is. And I believe that it will fix itself in the next couple of years. I've only seen several of these anomalies in the last 24 years, and they always fix themselves within 2 years.
So the window will close at some point. Anyone else with an aha moment or a question? Oh, here we go. All right. Hey, hi, Piper. All right. How you doing, Paul, huh? There we go. John, tell everyone where you're from.
John Brenzy from Charlotte, North Carolina. So on the absolute rent, and I may have missed this, but how does that look? Do you charge less per square foot? More? How does that look?
Again, you can only charge what the market bears. But I love an absolute net lease because I have no responsibilities or very little responsibility. So I have one absolute net property in my portfolio. It's a small metal building, probably 4,000, 5,000 square foot metal building that a adult daycare has been in. They get state reimbursements. That's where they get their money, their income is through state reimbursements. They've been in the building for 30 years, the same tenant, okay? And I am only responsible for two things in that building. The air conditioning system, if it needs replaced, if it needs repaired, it's their responsibility, and the roof. That is my only two responsibilities in that entire building. But they have been there so long. I just put a new parking lot in for them last year. I've done other things, but I don't have to, right? I can do it if I want to. I can do it if I want to help them, but I don't have to by the lease. So that's an absolute net. Thank you very much,
Oh,
guys.
no, I got one more question.
Oh.
I know there are some people in here with the rental portfolios in like the 10 to 15 range of doors, right?
Yep.
And it's becoming a lot harder to cash flow unless you furnish. Do you guys agree? Because of taxes and insurance and stuff? If you were going to start to make that shift, what would your buy box look like to sort of get started in that way?
I'd look for single tenant, like what we were just talking about. Properties less than 300,000, 400,000. Probably you're buying houses in that same price range, so it's going to be something that you could wrap your head around. And then as you get a couple of those under your belt and you see how, okay, this is not as scary as I thought it was, and I'd start ratcheting up that number because you'll find there's a lot more money available for commercial real estate than there are houses.
What would that type of commercial property look like under 500K? That would be decent to put
It
in
might
a
be an
buy
auto
box?
shop. It might be a metal building that has an auto shop. It might be a metal building that has an adult daycare, like the one that I have in my portfolio. It might be,
Something like that.
Yeah, it could be anything like that. Yeah.
All right, did you guys enjoy that session? Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. You know, during, Sarah, you mentioned